If you want to book more calls using DMs directly on LinkedIn without feeling salesy, I'm going to explain exactly how to write them using my 8-stage flow. Lots of people are a bit apprehensive to start conversations, and it kind of makes sense because research shows that fear of rejection spikes your stress response. And let's be honest, no one really wants to be stressed. But the problem is you're being led by biology rather than psychology. I've spent over 3,000 hours developing my Conversation OS, an entire system that makes it easy as hell to book calls using DMs. And it all starts with this 8-stage flow. So what we need to remember when we're sending DMs on LinkedIn, whether it's to someone cold, whether they're slightly warm, as soon as we're jumping into their inbox, what are they thinking? Well, they're probably holding quite a high guard, all right? They want to know, just as you do when someone messages you, what the hell does this person want? And more importantly, are they trying to sell to me? And if not, what's in it for me? Okay. So what we'll see a lot of people do is jump the gun straight away and start pitching immediately on this first message, which is not the aim at all. Okay. We save that for a little bit later in the journey, and we follow a permission-based inside C2C, which is the program I run. We follow a permission-based sort of cycle and flow that allows us to suggest calls rather than having to pitch. All right. So the first step is very, very simple. It's called first message. Now, that might not be too surprising, but it's more about the objective behind each of these stages rather than the naming of them. So we're not trying to do anything in this first message aside from do one thing only. Well, two things actually, I should say. One, get them to open it, and two, get them to reply. All right? You can't have a conversation with someone, one, if they don't see the conversation, but two, if they're not participating in it, right? So how we do this is very simple, in my opinion. We find commonalities, or one commonality between us and them. Now, that commonality could be a location. It could be an industry. It could be, I don't know, age, potentially. I don't know how you'd swing that one. It could just be a joke or sense of humour. It could be one of their posts. It could be that you've seen them featured in press. It could be a mutual connection. It could be that you do work in their industry or you know a client, all right? So what I like to do alongside each of these stages is make sure that every message I send ends in a question, all right? Because if you think about it, if someone pops into your DMs and just tells you something, that's very, very one way. So this needs to be, because it's permission-based, needs to be two-way. So every single one of them will end with a question. So you may just hop in and say, how's it going? And that will be very, very like low and chilled. Alternatively, you might want to go in like some people do and do a direct pitch. And I would urge you to think about the levels of directness, all right? How direct are you being? Very like indirect and very chill will be, how's it going? The other will be, buy my shit, all right? Or book a fucking call or whatever, all right? So the first message is not to try and do any of this. It's simply just to break down the barrier, lower the person's guard, and start to, well, get a reply. That's it, because then we move into number two, which is questions. Let's get rid of that. Questions and rapport, all right? So that's generally how conversations go. It's not people just barking things at each other. We want to establish rapport, and as I mentioned earlier, like bring that guard down so that person just thinks, oh, I can reveal a bit more information, or I like this person, or whatever. So you've always got to be thinking what's going on in the prospect's head. So these questions don't necessarily have to be anything to do with business or whatever it is you sell. It could be something a lot more chilled, all right? It could just be something about plans for the weekend, or I don't know, like I said before, like location or something like that. But we just want to establish, and you can go back and forth between all these stages as well, but we want to establish some form of rapport. Now, on LinkedIn, because it's a business platform, naturally, a lot of the conversation tends to be about business, which is great. However, it may not be, but there needs to become a point where we then hit stage 3, and that's transition. And I call this transitioning from chit chat into biz chat, all right? And this is a major sticking point for a lot of people. I'm going to give you a couple of examples as to how you can transition a little bit later. But so far, the hardest things, the things that people struggle with most, are the first message and the transition. And I'm actually just going to mark them so we can come back to them, okay? That's a tough point, and people find this is a tough point as well, all right? But once we've managed to switch to talking about business, whether it's their business or our business, depending on what you sell, things become a little bit easier. And as I say, you will dance around between these numbers, if you will. But once we have transitioned to speak about business, if it doesn't happen naturally here, we're then able to, again, either directly or indirectly, start qualifying this person. So you'll have an idea of who your ICP is, or what makes them, okay? And again, that'll be location, age, gender, whatever, all right? Industry, lots of different things. So you may already have a lot of this information from that person's profile, in which case you don't need to go into loads and loads of depth, but we're talking from a completely cold standpoint here, all right? And again, let's just think about that. If someone comes to us and we get an inbound message, we don't need to do any of these 3 steps. We can just go straight into qualification. So sometimes when we put out a lead magnet or a post, people will get in touch and say, how can I find out more? Well, we don't need to send the first message because they've sent it. We don't need to really build up any rapport because we retain the power because they've started the conversation, and it's immediately about business. So we don't need to transition. So therefore we will just move into step number 4. All right. Now these stages here, it gets a little bit tougher. However, I just want to touch on one thing which is super important. And I don't know about you, but the format of the DM will depend how much attention I give to a DM will depend a lot of the time on the format. So obviously we've got text, we've also got audio, and we've also got video as well. Now I think audio or voice notes are a great way to get through at any one of these stages. A lot of people aren't doing them, so it makes you different. They're a bit harder to ignore as well, because you actually have to deliberately listen to a voice note, whereas you can just quickly skim a text message as an example. And also they're highly personable. So you can't send them out. There are a couple of tools, but you can't send them out at scale. So with text messages, it can be like, oh, it's a copy and paste job. You know, I'm sure we've all received a message from someone going, hey, first name, how's the da-da-da, whatever. That's not good. That doesn't look good for anyone. But if it's a voice note, it's a lot harder to do. The step up from that is sending videos. Not a massive fan of receiving videos, especially on the first message, because for me it's a bit like, oh God, I wasn't ready to see your face just yet. But yeah, essentially we're moving to qualification, and this shouldn't be too hard because we know what we want from our ICP. Now, in between all these, you're going to get a mixture of responses. Okay, you're going to get people that don't reply. You're also then going to get people who give you very, very short answers, or who don't reveal much information, and the same happens here. So you're going to have to be ready to kind of like bounce around between these things, but you don't want to stay here too long, all right? I think you can get what people call friend zoned if you keep talking about the weather or about your pets or about your favorite foods or your nut allergy that you have. I don't know why I said that, but you get the idea, right? If you spend too long here, it's going to be even more awkward for you to then transition and start talking about business. But once you do, and once you're able to qualify this person, in doing so, you are going to aim to create leverage, all right? This is where we start to go down the real call booking route. And you don't want to force these conversations, all right? This could take place over like 2 months if need be, if you're trying to do it without sounding salesy at all. But during some point of one of these first 4, this person, if you ask the correct questions, is going to display some form of pain or problem that they have, or some form of desire, something that they want to achieve. Once we have this, we can then suggest a call. And I say suggest call rather than pitch, because you won't need to pitch. You have done enough of a good job establishing rapport, talking about business, and this is the main point why people would say yes to a call, which we'll get to in a sec. But here we suggest a call, and the objective here is basically just to see if they're open to speaking to you. So it's suggesting rather than pitching. Once they say yes or no, we send them a link to book in. We use Calendly, and then we take them to the call and we close the shit out of them if they're relevant, okay, and if they're a good fit. Now, this is the other part that people massively struggle with as well. All right, so we've got 3 major points. Let's just go around so we're aware of what the objectives are, okay? For the first message, simply to get it open and get a reply. For this, it is to get ourselves initially into the friend zone and lower that person's guard. After this, we want to talk about business. So that's the transition point there. The objective for qualification is obviously to make sure that they're a good fit. Pain or desire at stage 5 is to uncover a reason that we might be able to help them and also use that as leverage to move to stage 6, which is to see if they're open. We then send a link. The objective there is to book a call. And then once we have the call, the aim is to win business. All right. So we'll go into these 3 in a sec. But for now, I want you to really look at this. Okay. Where does your problem lie? Is it that you're just not sending enough first messages? Or is it that you're sending them, but they don't get opened or no one responds? Is it the fact that you just go straight to here, which is what most people do, all right? They just suggest a call really, really early, or even here, and they'll just send a fucking link to something that they have no idea if it's relevant to the person on the other end of the inbox because they haven't done the work building rapport, actually taking them through a process and making sure that they're relevant too, all right? So just take a look at these 8 stages. Put them in circles now so it's a bit more obvious to the eye. Which 1, 2, 3 of those 8 stages are you slipping at? All right. A lot of people stumble here, so they'll happily stay here and talk about the weather or where someone lives or the nut allergy or whatever it may be, but they just don't know what to say here. Same with this. They might be starting to ask questions, but they just don't know when is the right time to jump in and suggest a call. So we've kind of covered what we can say on this first message. I would always say you want to say hi. Then you probably want to acknowledge or compliment. And then you want to ask a question. Okay. Now that question can be as low level as how's it going? All the way up to like, I don't know, would you fancy going on a call, hopping on a call sometime, or would you like to buy something? I would say keep it low level to begin with and just test. So what we tell our clients to do is to come up with 5 sets of opening messages. All right. Some will be very direct, i.e. buy my shit or I can help, versus very indirect on the other end. Then we'll have some humor. And then we have research. And I can't remember the other one, but you get the idea. So each day we would send 20 plus of these messages, the exact same message every single time to just see what gets the most cut through and also what feels best to us, what feels most natural. Because once we have that, we could go, oh, it's actually the humor and the very direct messages that get the most responses. So you're like, cool, well, I'm just going to double down on those and I will come up with 5 variations of each. All right. So all this is really, as much as it is an art, it's mainly science, I would say, because you want to get as much data as you can to find out what feels good for you and also what works. So there are a few different things you can look out for here. And I think just doing this across a Monday to Friday, 20 to 40 to however many messages you want to send. And this whole thing works for emails as well, right? But it's just sending different types to see what's going to work and what doesn't. Now, when it comes to the transition, I like to be quite forward with this approach. I will exchange 1 or 2 messages here before I jump straight into transition. And again, we go from indirect to very direct. Now, there are so many different ways you can do this, but imagine someone's just talking like, yes, I used to live in Scunthorpe, it's great here. You can just jump in and go, how's XYZ going? So for me, I would jump in and go, how's LinkedIn going? Standard question. It's made a bit easier for offers like ours because we're on LinkedIn and we're talking about LinkedIn. But it's all about how you front load or frame the question. So you can interrupt anyone in a one-to-one DM conversation at any time, and you can just go, was wondering, or curious, or can I ask you a Q? All right. Ones I use as well are, have we spoken before? Or have we chatted on Instagram before? Have we met before? All of these are going to lead people to say no. And that means I can go, oh, well, in that case, what is it you do? And then once I ask someone what they do, people are more than happy to talk about themselves normally. So they'll tell me about their business. And because we have a biz op offer or a business opportunity offer, I can then straight away jump into the qualification. And when it comes to the qualification, it's open questions. How, who, what, when, why. All right. All of those types of questions, they're called open-ended questions. They allow you to pull out information, okay? There's no way that a how question could be answered with a yes or a no, or a one word response is pretty typical. It's pretty hard to do there as well. So once we have these, if we're asking how do you do that, or how do you not normally get leads at the moment, or how do you tend to deal with it when this situation arises, or who have you used in the past to help with this, or have you tried anyone like this in the past? Have is obviously a closed question. They are probably going to go, no, we haven't, or yes, we have, or I would really like to do this, or actually I want to, but I'm really struggling with this. And that is going to unearth our pain or desire. So we can, at this stage, go back and again start to re-qualify once we have a bit of pain or desire, or we could just come here. Now, this is the third sort of sticking point for most people, suggesting a call. You don't need to give a big long spiel. All we want is some micro commitment that will allow us to then send a link to someone. So what I would say in this is like, I hate to be forward, but being as you mentioned this, we've helped loads of people solve that problem. Would you be open to hopping on a call to talk about it? It doesn't need to be any more complicated than that. And what that does is give the person two options. So it gives them an exit if they want, and they can say no. And that means you could either go back to qualification again, or you can leave it, or they'll say yes. And if they say yes, we send a link. All right. Now again, they can still say no or yes here, but we are one stage closer to booking that call. And that's what all of these actions are lined up to do. All right. In order to just take this person to the next step, because we can't get them on a call if we haven't sent the first message. So it all starts with this open reply. Establish a bit of back and forth. This person trusts us a bit. They're willing to give away a bit of information. We've got to know each other. Think like how any friendship that you've got at the moment actually started. It wasn't just through them, hey, should we be friends immediately? It doesn't work like that, right? So again, this is only one question. And you can interrupt any time, as I say, and just say, how's LinkedIn going? Or how's whatever going? After that, qualification. Now, you don't always need to go through all these stages. And as I said, you will jump around a little bit between them too. You can suggest a call very early on, and you might start talking about business straight away. You might already know that this person looks qualified. You might not even need pain or desire, and this can be a real sticking point if you're waiting for a reason to latch on or to find that leverage before you suggest a call. You could just suggest a call. Like, I notice you're trying to do this. We actually work with a load of people and help them do the same in record time. Would you be open to having a chat about it? But I would not recommend skipping any of these things if you don't have to, because the better it plays out, the longer it goes. When you actually make that suggestion and make what is one of the biggest asks in the DMs, can you spend some of your time with me so I can convince you that it's worth giving me money for something? It's a massive ask. The more you go through these, the easier that ask becomes. Now, what I've not touched on here, I've intentionally left quite a bit of information out, is the order in which you attack prospects or speak to prospects. Also, the exact sort of frames and messages that you send. I've been quite woolly intentionally about that. And the reason for that is I'm running something called the Priority Pipeline Workshop. I'm running it on the 4th of September. I'm going to do it live. And we are going to cover all of this, all right? Specifically, my Conversation OS. So I'm going to show you how to map out your whole priority pipeline in order so you can execute on it in between 10 to 30 to 45 minutes, 10 to 45 minutes a day. We'll establish where your hot leads are. And I used to call this follow the money. So we'll establish who is closest to giving you money that day and what to say to them at each stage. All right. So we'll install the priority pipeline into your business. I'm then going to give you all what my daughter actually called these the deadly DMs. Love it. I've built a custom GPT trained on this whole process, trained with openers, closers, questions, open-ended questions, closed-ended questions for every single one of these stages of the journey. And I'm going to give you access to that. And not only that, I'm going to give you a lead tracker as well. So you can actually track, and this is the exact same lead tracker that we still use, the exact same lead tracker that we give to our C2C clients as well. So you know where people are up to and who you need to speak to on what day, in what order, and also with the deadly DMs, you're going to know, with the GPT, you're going to know exactly what to say to them. Plus, it's in your tone of voice as well. So tickets to this workshop are not free. I'm not going to give away this kind of information that's taken me thousands of hours just like that. But it's under £100, okay? So it's very, very cheap in comparison for learning these processes and in being able to install this stuff into your business. So it's the 4th of September. I've only ever done this once before, and that's where if you join us for £96, that's all it is, you're actually going to be invited onto a C2C group call. So I'm going to be running it just like I would normally run one of our calls. So you can actually get a taster for how our program is probably very different to a lot of the programs that you may have seen or been in the past. On top of all this, you will get the replay emailed to you the very next day, and you will get lifetime access to the priority pipeline, to the GPT, and also to the lead tracker as well. All of these things are customizable. There will be no AI copy and paste bullshit scripts. It's all going to be based on the information that you feed our GPT, and then it is trained on our frameworks, one of which is this, but we go a lot deeper. There'll also be the opportunity at the end to ask me questions. So we'll do a live Q&A. We're aiming for 90 minutes. A lot of the time it goes to 120 minutes. I know that LinkedIn DMs are one of the biggest sticking points for small business owners. They know they need to do it. They avoid it because they don't know what to say or because they're a bit scared. And therefore they don't get the results, and therefore they think it doesn't work. It definitely works. I've done 7 figures, and I think about 70% just over of our closed revenue has come from interactions in the DMs. So the other 30% is inbound or something like that. But it's about 70%. So if you want to be able to conquer this, you need a process, you need a system. Not only that, when you have a system, it makes your reliance on your nervous system a lot less as well. So you can actually wake up and start the day by going through the priority pipeline in order, and you might not even get to here. Like, we don't really talk about cold messaging. But you'll be firing these things out. It'll be very structured, very systemized, and you'll know exactly what to say to every single person in every single situation. So I hope that was helpful. At the very least, you can start to map out some templates or some frameworks for these stages. But if you want to get the whole thing, the whole shebang, 4th of September, 7 p.m. UK time, you'll get all this and at least an hour and a half with me with a Q&A tagged on at the end as well.